Hello, everyone, and welcome to all of you for a panel which I hope will inspire you all and to most importantly remind ourselves that speed is an essence in this subject. So we'll spend about 30 minutes with our panelists, and then I will take a few questions and comments for them to make a comment and respond for the rest of the time. It is absolutely undeniable, as Fredrik said in the opening statement, that the race for the planet is on. And we are all agreed that the banking community has a mega big role to play if we were to win this race. I'm joined today by Maria Lombardo, Head of ESG Advisory Sustainable Finance at Standard Chartered, Fredrik Nilzén, Head of Group Sustainability at Swedbank, and Michael van der Meer, Head of Sustainable Investment Specialist, Sustainability Strategy Advisory and Finance Department at Credit Suisse. Thank you all for joining me today. As we all know, the financial community has made sizable commitment to set various targets to help reduce the carbon footprint. Everyone in the community is huge under pressure to deliver employee, investor, customer, and government. ESG is no longer a side project. It is the main project to run our business. So let's get started by first taking a poll in the audience. I'd like you all to be ready for this. So I'm going to ask you a question, and if you could just answer. It's a very simple question. I just want to see, do you believe that the banking industry is going to meet the very public commitment by 2030? Can you just give me a sense of what you all think? I'll just wait for a second. I haven't done this before, so we'll have to see how it goes. So it's a yes or a no. I'll just look at the result. Oh, we've got an interesting audience feedbacks here. So we've got some believer at 61%. We have some people we still need to believe or still engaged. So panel, this is our job today. So let's get some passion and some energy around this, the pace and the reality of what lies ahead. So Fredrik, I will start with you. I'll come to you first. There was so much noise in the build-up of COP26 in Glasgow at the end of last year. Can you help sum up where we stand, you think, today? How is the race going so far from your point of view? And what's the immediate objective, thinking about the reality of maybe this year or a year and a half? So Fredrik?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, and you look great. You look brave.
Brilliant. This is, when you have a software you don't work with every day, then you do what you can with the background. So now I'm here. Thanks for having me here, Nadine. But also thanks for the question. So yeah, I think there were a lot of opinions, right, around COP26, and some definitely said, blah blah blah. Nothing really happened. A lot of talks, but no action. But I would still say is that maybe less than I hoped for, but to some extent more than I expected as well. And I still wanted to say and share some highlights. To begin with, moving into COP26, we had a trajectory of almost 2.7 degrees centigrade, right, in terms of the global warming. And coming out of the COP26, we had 1.9. Is not enough, but still it's a massive improvement. And in addition to that, you could say that now every year the contributions from each nation need to be there, and they can not only update every 5th year. So I think having updates on every year is a great thing. Secondly, I would also say that for the first time we talked about fossil fuels in practice and got it into writing, and it's about phasing out. So, or phasing down, I would say. Sorry, it was first phasing out and then it was phasing down. But we can also conclude that not only the investors, the insurers, the banks, the all financial services company, we came together, and we represented almost $130 trillion in assets, and providing a pledge to the market that is about to decarbonize by mid-century. So it was super strong. No one is left behind right now. So now it's the decade of action, right? And we're seeing action happening as well. Not easy, not an easy journey, but not impossible. And maybe the last thing that I wanted to mention is the fact that the transition of financial services is about transparency. It's a transparency revolution. We will now also be responsible of providing information of what it means, the result of lending money, or for that sake, providing someone with services. And with that said, finally, the IFRS put out an international sustainability standards board that will start working on a global standard on this. So this is music to my ears, at least, where I can see an environment right now where we're trying to accommodate tens of standards, and it's very resource intensive. So you know what, Nadine, I'm hopeful. I've worked with this for soon 15 years, and I haven't seen so much firework in the financial services until now that I see. So I'm very positive. The transition is here.
Great. Fire. I like that. Lots of energy on the subject and lots of passion. And it's true. I think, I think the message is clear. It's not about why we're doing this, it's how we're doing this and how quickly we can do this. So on that subject, Michael, can I come to you next? I mean, definitely the race is on. You're going to hear me say that 3 times, 4 times. But a race of a course with a start, a middle, at the end, where are you on your thoughts about where are we on the reality of progress, really? What can we really do in the next 18 months? What's some of the obstacle choice maybe that banks have to make? Or what's the great opportunity that lies ahead in terms of the industry?
Thanks, Nadine. Yeah, and I agree with Fredrik. We've really seen, I think, really big kind of progress, very recently. And the way I would describe it is, in the past, maybe we've always talked about adoption. And I think certainly for us, but I think by now for most in the industry, we're now at the stage of talking about execution. Right. And so if you're talking about adoption, I think, it's really about getting senior people into a room and agreeing maybe on some broad targets and things like that. And I think that's one step. But I think that's to some extent, certainly for us in the past. I mean, we have now a publicly committed net zero commitment. We're setting targets and so on. And so now the big barriers and the obstacles are not on the senior levels. I would say they're actually more on the lower levels and really on the execution side. And there, what are you dealing with? You're dealing there with organizational change, and organizational change is, of course, very tough. And one of the things that I've experienced, is really, most people at an organization, I mean, they are in the position they are because they've done things a certain way for a long period of time. And this can be, you may have a fund manager who's allocated to certain sectors in the past, been successful on that basis, has outperformed in the past. It may be, on the lending side, somebody who's lent, has built very deep relationships with certain industries, certain sectors, and things like that. And so it's very tough now to say, okay, there is actually this top level commitment. How do you translate that now into an impact, for you personally, right? And that's when really the rubber hits the road, and people get very nervous, right, changing their approach. But I would say, to some extent, we really have to move forward with that. I mean, I think in the past, to some extent, I mean, we've all had the luxury, I think, of not thinking about what is our impact on our environment. So I always say, as an example, a very kind of generic example, you know, we've all, as financial market participants, we're all to some extent believers in efficient market hypothesis. But if you believe in efficient markets, I mean, that's all nice and well, but you need to have the luxury to be able to believe in that, right? And by now, I think we don't have the luxury to exclusively rely on the market to solve these problems. And also remembering we are market participants ourselves, and we should allocate capital proactively. And so for us now, the biggest job is really engaging with everybody, you know, in my case at the bank, on the asset management side, and really explaining to people, okay, unfortunately, the way we're doing things now, you know, we have to change them. Otherwise, we've got bigger problems than worrying about your quarterly, you know, underperformance or outperformance and so on. And so that's really something, you know, to move with. And unfortunately, one of the issues we also have is you know, trying to, you know, encourage change on the client side. And what we would see, for example, you know, is that pension funds have very strict mandates where they can't, you know, deviate from certain benchmarks and so on. But for us, then, as we try to move away, you know, from an unsustainable world to sustainable world, you know, we would expect, you know, big changes, right, in the benchmark. So if we're projecting in the future, and we're even trying to now set up a decarbonization strategy for the oil and gas sector, well, you know, that's nice and well, but I think we should also be asking ourselves the question, will this sector even exist by 2030 and 2050, right? And so what are we really, you know, what are we, you know, in a way, setting very fixed, aligning with very fixed benchmarks? If everybody allocated to that benchmark in the same way and everybody had these strict weights, you would never change anything. And so if you then also operate within that system and allocate, you know, benchmarks and emission reduction targets within that system, you may be missing a trick, in the sense that, you know, industries also change, right? They get bigger, they disappear, and so on. And that's another thing where I think that building in that flexibility in the way we're now doing things, it's a difficult one, but that's, you know, a big challenge now we're facing as well.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And I think I just want to, before I go to you, Maria, on moving to the clients and how important it is to work with our clients, continuing meeting their needs through their transformation. I just want to remind everyone that they can ask questions or comments using the Q&A down there, because I can't see. And then we'll try to make this a little bit more dynamic. As my panel has promised me, they like something dynamic, and they will not shy away from any question that might be difficult. So, but as you say, Michael, I think it is fair to say, and I feel it as well within my organization, that we're about to start a completely new way to do business, and that it will come to choices, and we'll have to make those choices that might not be an immediate win. And I think on that, I'd like to come to you, Maria. I mean, as part of your role, you talk about a lot to clients, in particular the strategy around ESG. You are more in the field, so we're really keen to share, you know, with the audience and with us, and to have a discussion of what you seeing so far. How are the customer of the bank responding? How can we best be set up to support them going forward?
Thank you, Nadine. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you, and I can see
Fantastic.
you. And I know you don't use Zoom a lot, but you're doing great.
Yes, thank you so much. We overcome all the technical difficulties,
Yes.
and I think it's a segue to what Fredrik and Michael have just said in terms of the different dimensions that we see the transition, the ESG sustainability is bringing, and more particularly the net zero transition within our business and the role of the bank. I just want to add maybe some additional layer here. First of all, one element is really the change of philosophy, the change of really approach that we are having. We are entering into a business change. So this means that when we are talking, we are all, and Fredrik and Michael mentioned it as well, we are all working together. With this togetherness, this partnership is a very important element that we as a bank need to consider. And this is why the relationship that we have with our clients need to change parallel with the way we are changing as a bank. I just want to quote a survey that we have done in May last year. It's called Zeronomic. And in that survey, we have seen that 3/4 of business owners, so corporates effectively, they said to us that they were afraid of change. They were afraid of dedicating, of changing their business model that is quite proven and generating revenues, and introduce this cost that sustainability is bringing, that transition, that changing the modus operandi, that incorporating ESG factor is bringing. So the one way that we can cooperate with our client in that is really to be partner in this change, is to help out where these difficulties can be found, and how to find solutions, because obviously we are, and Fredrik defined it very well, is no longer the market that is pricing it, and we are entering into a more dynamic approach to pricing the advantages that we are going to get in the future, because we need to be able to have the cost that this transition is requiring, to have more advantages in the future, because more it would cost us more not to act, rather than is more the cost of inactions rather than the benefit that we get by acting today. So on one end is the change of mentality, is really the change of point of view, is really having a longer term view. On the other hand, and particularly we do see this in the market that we are operating, mainly emerging markets. So we're talking about Asia, we're talking about Africa, where this transition is needed the most. And there are estimating sectors, places in these countries that need even more this change. So the other dimension is to do it in a way that is protecting not just the environment, but is protecting society, and is also bringing at the same time economic development. So it's very important for us to put an element of just transition in every type of transaction that we do. Are they just for the society? Are they just for the employees of the company? And so how can we measure that? How can we see that aspect? And finally, is in the innovation that innovation in financial instruments, is in really defining financial instruments that would incorporate these elements for our clients to track, to be diligent, for ourselves to be diligent as well, and have a premium on the market on results that can be demonstrable, measurable, and tracked.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. Fredrik, do you want to any thought on that, Michael, as well? I mean, I'm getting a lot of interesting question on these, so we might just go straight to the question, but I just want to get your view on the client aspect and on that piece, if you don't mind.
No, but I think I would just like to emphasize and comment two things that I've heard, one from Michael and one from Maria, and And I think the first thing you talked about the execution phase. We're in the execution phase, but we don't have the rule book, right? We don't have the correctness and know everything, and we are culturally used to be able to make decisions on third decimal level, right? That's not possible right now. So we need to stay curious. But I fully agree. This is the times where the middle manager levels need to get into the game. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm referring to permafrost. It's the most frozen part of every large organization, right? And permafrost is obviously melting in the northern part of the planet. And it's melting inside the financial services companies now as well, and that is really good news. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy. These are hard things, and I think in 2021 I've had so many conversations with people from our risk department, from our compliance department, from our credit department, from everywhere, and less people try to look around the corner for someone who should manage, in a sense, making sure that the bank is sustainable. So it's your own mandate that you need to mobilize. So I think that was really great. And the second thing around innovation, steel companies, they innovate their whole business model and technologies that have used for 1,000 years. Why should financial services be the only sector where we don't need to find innovations, new toolboxes, new ways of supporting our customers? So I think it is an innovative mindset that Maria is kind of highlighting here that we need to have. There might be solutions that we haven't seen yet and partnerships. So that's our transition.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I sit in many of those committees within HSBC, and a leap of faith is required without necessarily having all the answer, and from every level. And it's not easy, but it is doable and it's exciting. So, Michael, before I'm gonna go straight to the question, but you'll get the first one. So I have had interest. Thank you for the comments and some of the question. I'm going to pick ESG is a very wide subject, as our keynote speaker has highlighted, touches not the E, the S, and the G. So I've got an interesting question here to say, is ESG running of being more a marketing tool to the bank? Maybe those people that I'm not yet convinced on the voting part, a must communicate or only a possibly do. So, Mark, what do you think about that, Michael? What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. In the past, you may have been able to characterize it a bit like that. But I think that was also for a good reason, because I think it was really about, creating a movement and creating, constituencies and things to get a kind of a broad base of support, right? And because of that, at the beginning, I think you're saying a lot of things before you can do it, right? Because you haven't even got broad-based support, you don't even have the industry with you, you haven't carried all those people with you. But that's what I'm saying. I think we're literally now at the stage of actually becoming very concrete. And so what does that mean, right? So in the past, people could say, okay, Credit Suisse, they've said a lot of nice things about the environment and so on, about social and governance areas, but what does this mean? And so, last year, we actually made a net zero commitment. And what does it mean for this year? This year, it means that we are submitting our specific targets to the Science Based Targets Initiative and really working out the details. And I think Fredrik said, well, there's actually no hard and fast rules. And actually, I'm a great believer of muddling through as well. I think here, we literally have a year to actually come with concrete plans for all parts of our business. And how does it look like? It just really involves starting somewhere, right? What's the first thing we can pick up in each department, and what would it look like? And then, that's when we get into these issues, right, which I mentioned before. Is it good enough now to, for example, put in a sectoral target, Or should we think a bit more intelligently, keep some flexibility in case certain sectors will change or even disappear, right? And so we're really down in that nitty-gritty. And I would say literally we have a year to do those things now. And then actually in 2023, we'll be actually bound by those. And so we'll be really in an environment where we're really implementing there. So I think in that kind of context, I think it's really hard to, I think it's easy to say in the past, yes, you're talking a lot and making a lot of commitments, and I think that would be fair. But I think right now, I think it's kind of difficult to say when we're literally setting those targets, implementing those, and really, starting to also move capital and change our asset allocation, excluding certain industries and customers that are not part of the transition. I think then you're starting to see, okay, we're really dealing now with very concrete things.
Thanks, Michael. I do think that we also, as usual, we look at our mirror, and sometimes we don't actually all the things we already do on that agenda. We've started, and it's just a matter of escalating. How do we give incentive to customer to use services that are, fits with the commitment? Maria, I'm going to come to you with a question that you're probably going to like, as we talked about the S and your passion around the social piece. What impact has COVID-19 had on ESG agenda in 2021, and what can it accelerate in 2022?
Very difficult questions, to be honest. I think we can see this on a few perspective, because if we look at the impact of COVID-19 on the general businesses in respect to our clients and corporate clients and governments, we for example work a lot with governments in the support in defining financial solution for government to and particularly in emerging market to really support the investment that they need to make to afford vaccinations for all their population. So that there has been again, I like talking about financial innovation that will help these social needs, these social aspects. So in this particular situation on COVID-19, there are many examples, but a good one is the partnering on blended financing with India to really helping the country to afford vaccinations. In terms of the businesses, it introduced an awareness in terms of guarantee employment, an awareness in terms of mental health, as we all have to work from home, an awareness in terms of cybersecurity, because we are all dealing with data from different locations. All those are elements that now are becoming ESG, if you like, material issues, material factors that we need to consider to avoid any potential risk and hence to avoid any potential cost or damages that a mismanagement of these elements might create. So there is an amplification of risk. As it is in the whole ESG, it is an amplification of the way we are looking at reality. And so with COVID-19, this amplification has amplified even more, in my opinion.
Yes, thank you, Maria. I actually feel I have reduced my carbon footprint during COVID with working from home. But, the non-believer could tell you that, yes, but I use other type of energy that might not use as equally. So I think the product cycle, the way we do customer service, the way we implement projects, price services, I think will play a big role in terms of impact. And I do think COVID has accelerated the digitalization and somehow has had a role to play in many ways, bringing the technology aspect. And I'm going to go into that subject now by there's a question out there to say, what role does AI can play on the execution piece of ESG? So who wants to have a go at this? Fred, I can see you have saved Fredrik. Fred, you have switched on the mute button, so go ahead.
Thank you. I can give it a start and inviting Michael and Maria to join. I think one of the biggest challenges of these times, if we're about to transparently, disclose impact, then we need underlying data, right? In terms of the performance of our underlying assets. So data is everything. It's a horrible answer, but it is. And then AI obviously is almost like a machinery or ignition on how we can interpret and make sense out of all of this immense amounts of data. So I'm sure there will be a lot of different use cases on how to apply AI directly in our risk management and in our internal operations, but also out towards our customers. Because in the end of the day, we have a big responsibility in helping our customers to get their head around these matters and make good choices and make good investments. And then AI, data-based AI, will for sure be one key element of that. So as simple as that, Nadine, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Fred. Michael, do you want to jump in?
Sure, thanks, Nadine. And I agree with what Fredrik said, and actually in a very specific area where we try to apply AI and where we find it most useful is really to identify and value intangible factors. So if you look at the market in the past, was obviously much more valued based on tangible factors and so on. And now, according to some research, 90% of the market value in the S&P 500 is explained by intangible factors, right? Things like brand, things like reputation, network effects, and things like that. And of course, sustainability analysis and sustainability research really focuses on this intangible part. And this is in particular an area where I think looking at more advanced data analysis and so on, and applying AI in those areas is very interesting for us.
Thank you, Michael. I mean, I know the time is already running out. I think there is one question there is a bit cheeky, and I like cheeky question and like it about, the compromise between, is it really a compromise between sustainability and profits? And I know it's a tricky question. I have my view on this, but who would like to have that? Maria, you just open and
I start, yes.
And I'm just be conscious of the time. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
I think again here there is sacrifice to do. There is a cost. It's not, I don't think we kidding ourselves to say that there is no cost and is all nice. We're all very good. There is a cost. So maybe it's a way we look at it in a different perspective, and the perspective changes, because we might not have a return tomorrow. We might not have a return in a quarter, in 5 years time, but this return might be in a longer time. It's the whole meaning of sustainability is stay there for the long term. So we need to think again of the cost of inaction vis-a-vis the cost of action. The cost of action is much lower than the cost of inaction, as we know well, on all the element of environment, on all the element on the social aspects, on the governance aspects, so on all the ESG aspects, not just because the climate have an impact in the long term and we want to be here in 50 years time.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. I like what you said about, the cost of action versus the cost of inaction. And I do think, that it's unbelievable. I think it's something that I'm going to keep in my head, because I do think we all have that responsibility. So I'm afraid we've run out of the time already. I really want to, I think we could talk about this subject for for many hours. And I really want to encourage all of you to do that within your organization. Thank you, Fredrik, Michael, Maria, and the audience for your participation. I would like I wrote something. The panel is called "The Race is On," but I'm talking to the sportive there and the people who voted that they might not believe that we will meet our commitment. I will say that in a race, every minute counts. Some start slow and finish fast. Some start fast and struggle to keep the pace. And then you have the champion who train and don't give up no matter what. So I hope that this little session has inspired you to do even more of what you can do within your organization and with your customer. And maybe it is not just about winning the race, it is about participating as much as possible. So on that, I will say goodbye. Thank you very much and hope to see you all soon again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.